All right, time for 49ers grades against the Jets. We do this after every single 49ers regular season and postseason game. It's become a nice tradition. It's a good way to go through the entire team's performance, and the entire team's performance in the 32-19 victory over the Jets was highlighted by Jordan Mason. Just how good was Jordan Mason in this game? It goes beyond the nearly 150 rushing yards. This is truly staggering stuff. Take a look at this from NFL Next Gen Stats. This is missed tackles forced. 13 on the weekend for Jordan Mason. That is the most of any NFL player here in week one. I saw James Conner play the Buffalo Bills, and Conner, he's built like a linebacker, he's built like Fred Warner, and he was breaking a lot of tackles for the Cardinals against the Bills. He was down at 8. Ramondre Stevenson, Brian Robinson, 8 and 7 respectively. Those guys are not holding a candle to Jordan Mason with 13 missed tackles forced. That would be a pace of 221 for a 17-game season. For perspective, Christian McCaffrey led the entire NFL last year with 75 missed tackles forced, according to PFF's count. So the NFL lead was 75 last year. Jordan Mason had 13 missed tackles forced in a single game. That would be a pace of 221 versus 75, which won the title last year. Now, of course, we cannot expect Jordan Mason to maintain this workload for a long time. Even if Christian McCaffrey is out for a while, that won't happen. 28 carries for Jordan Mason on Monday night was the most carries for any running back, for any player under head coach Kyle Shanahan, and this is Shanahan's 8th season. So we had never seen a workload that big, but Jordan Mason was able to shoulder it, and he was able to force 13 missed tackles, just absolutely staggering numbers. So as we move to our grades, needless to say, A+ for the running back position. 49ers had a celebrity Deebo Samuel appearance at running back. I could go through the stats here. This is what you hear rustling. It's the game book from yesterday. Mason had 147 yards on those 28 carries. A touchdown. Should have been 2. Deebo Samuel, 8 carries, 23 yards. It's not a great average, but it was hard running from Deebo Samuel. I mean, he preserved a 49ers field goal attempt. They try to run per dog. Per dog is the play that the 49ers talked about after they showed it during training camp. We're not allowed to talk about trick plays that they show at training camp, but if the 49ers talk about the play themselves, well, we can talk about what they said in the press conference. And Brock Purdy discussed per dog in the press conference, described it as a pass from Deebo Samuel to himself, to the quarterback. 49ers ran that play. It was, I think, supposed to be a pass to Brock Purdy, but DJ Reed, the former 49er, made sure that Purdy was covered. It's almost like DJ watches the YouTube channel and was like, oh, I know this is per dog. I could see this double pitch motion. I better stay on the quarterback. So Deebo Samuel had to eat the football. He couldn't throw it. Good decision. It was 3rd down. 49ers were in field goal range, and he faced the prospect of a huge loss. Quinnen Williams was in the backfield, like 12, 13 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And Deebo Samuel started changing direction, cutting every which way, fighting his way back near the line of scrimmage, which preserved a field goal attempt of about 50 yards. So you can't just look at the stats and say, oh, Deebo Samuel didn't run the ball well. I thought that he ran the ball really well. The touchdown, that was big. That was after that was a wimpy holding call on Deebo Samuel against Sauce Gardner. Wiped out the Mason touchdown, but it allowed Deebo to score a touchdown of his own. 38 carries, 180 yards for the 49ers in the run game. The final 11 yards out of that 180 came from Brock Purdy. A+ for the running back position on a night not featuring Christian McCaffrey. How about that? That's huge for the 49ers. Quarterback, Brock Purdy gets an A. I had, and maybe I could still get that out. I had a lot of the graphics a little bit earlier from some of the advanced stats. And Purdy outplayed Aaron Rodgers. It's the kind of stuff that I put on my Twitter, actually. I could open this up so we do have it. I think that having a visual illustration of the efficiency is really nice. And as the course of the year continues, we're going to have an even closer look at how quarterbacks compare via all the graphs and all the charts that we look at, which are really fun. For now, I'm not going to look at graphs because we have only a 1-game sample, but we can see, and I have it right here. I'm getting it open right now. We can see how players and quarterbacks fared in the 1-game sample. And I think this is the fair way to frame things for the time being. So this is why Brock Purdy gets an A, because he outplayed Aaron Rodgers. That's good efficiency, 0.27 EPA per play against a really good New York Jets defense. Average depth of target, I mean, that's not something that I grade as low being bad and high being good. It's more of a stylistic stat, but he was averaging 9.7 yards downfield on his ADOT, the average depth of target, which means that the Purdy had to make some accurate throws downfield. The QBR, you always want that above 50 to be above average. 71 is very solid for Brock Purdy. I didn't think that he flinched a single time. I thought that he made maybe one dangerous throw on the game. It was the one to Saubert that Tony Adams, the Jet safety, knocked away in the second half. But even Kyle Shanahan wasn't upset with that throw. He said that he saw what Purdy was doing with it. Brock used his legs. He overcame a slower start against the defense that could really cover. We said that 3 of the top 5 graded cover guys from the back 7 in the entire NFL in 2023 were on this Jets defense, and Purdy tested them early. Quincy Williams knocked away the pass to Deebo Samuel. Sauce Gardner knocked the pass away to Brandon Ayuk. CJ Mosley was calling plays for that Mike linebacker position, but he later exited the game with an injury. Brock Purdy was able to identify the matchups and pick and choose his battles to make this an efficient game. Best example of that was after Sauce Gardner had knocked the ball away to Brandon Ayuk. It was kind of a drop, kind of a pass breakup. I don't know how you would classify it. I think Ayuk in better form would probably catch it, which is what the 49ers are hoping for later this year. But after that specific play, there was a third down where Brock Purdy saw that a safety, Tony Adams, speaking of him, was on Brandon Ayuk, and he made sure to go back to the well. It's that kind of recognition from the quarterback position that is required to make things efficient out on the football field. And I think Brock Purdy definitely showed it. Move on to receiver. This is where I think it was a little uglier for the 49ers. Now, I think Deebo Samuel and Jawan Jennings both had great games. 5 catches, 54 yards for Deebo, 64 for Jennings. There was the play to Deebo where Brock Purdy escaped pressure, stepped up in the pocket. He had guys grabbing onto his jersey, was able to dump it off. And then Samuel, with his speed and his change of direction, was able to turn it into a positive gain. So the problem isn't there. The problem is with Brandon Ayuk. He was targeted 5 times, but only 2 catches for 28 yards. It was, I think, a hybrid between a drop and a pass breakup on the initial throw to Brandon Ayuk that was against the coverage of Sauce Gardner. But then there was one where it wouldn't have been the easiest catch in the world, that's for sure, but it was just such a perfect pass into the end zone from Purdy to Ayuk, and he wasn't able to hang on to it. And there's something about watching Ayuk in that first game that suggests that he isn't quite the same explosive, confident player that he was, especially last year in the contract year, which makes sense because he missed all of training camp and all of preseason. He's going to need some time to season the skills this year. But until those skills are seasoned, I can't give the receiver room much better than this. This is my worst grade. I'm giving him a C just because this could have been a very big blowout. Probably should have been a very big blowout, but Brandon Ayuk, not fully back in the swing of things just yet, was not able to make the catch on an MVP level throw from Brock Purdy. Along those lines, the tight end position, really solid for the 49ers. Eric Saubert was so good blocking yesterday. Kittle has needed a compatriot. He had one when it came to the blocking game with Charlie Werner. I think Saubert might be able to bring something really similar, and maybe even something from the receiving game. I know Purdy forced a pass to him where Tony Adams came over the top, but Saubert is familiar with the 49ers system, having played in Miami and in Houston last year. He totally bought in. One of the quotes that I got from Eric Saubert in my article talking about the trenches in this game was that he's having a ton of fun playing football right now, which is a common refrain that you hear from guys who come into the 49ers building. Then there is the offensive line. 2 pressures given up by Jake Brendel, who, when they're in true pass set formations, Brendel has some real struggles. And 2 pressures given up by Colton McKivitz. I think it's abundantly clear that the 49ers' 2 weakest spots along the offensive line are at center and right tackle. Last year, the weakest spot statistically was at right guard. Dominic Pooney has changed things. Only 1 pressure given up by Dominic Pooney so far this year. So I give the offensive line a B+ just because I don't think that Brendel was very good, especially at the start when things were a little bit more tenuous for the 49ers. But I'm not going to nitpick much further than that. I think that this was a solid performance that opened up a huge, huge amount of space for Jordan Mason. Mason averaged what do we got here? 5.3 per carry. Deebo Samuel scored his touchdown. The pass protection, again, was solid for the 49ers after they were able to reposition the nexus point of this game from pass protection to run blocking. And then the run blocking was generally superb for the 49ers from Dominic Pooney onward. Even Spencer Burford, after he filled in for Aaron Banks with the calf contusion, started doing some really good things at left guard. Move to the defensive line. Defensive line for the 49ers. I mean, this is the big overhaul. And when we look at how much this unit struggled against the run last year, I thought they were too upright with guys like Armstead, who started dealing with a lot of injury issues, with Javon Kinlaw, who had knee issues of his own, also really tall player. I think they needed to get a little wider and a little shorter up front. So that's exactly what they did body type wise. Malik Collins, Jordan Elliott, both of those guys had good games, but the best out of the best at the defensive line was Leonard Floyd. Early run stoppage, sack a little bit later, cleanup variety. Nick Bosa led the way with 5 pressures. Leonard Floyd had 4. The totality of the effort gives the 49ers defensive line an A. Linebacker, I thought that Devondre Campbell was okay, but I thought that he might have been a little slow just to get to his coverage assignment in the context of the zone a couple times early in the game. So the veteran, previously of the Green Bay Packers, is going to have to hold the fort until Dre Greenlaw is ready to come back, which is totally okay with the 49ers. They have breathing room, and they have Fred Warner too, who forced the fumble. This is the first time, and I've covered the 49ers since 2017, that teammates have referred to George Kittle and Fred Warner as future Hall of Famers. It's a hell of a blossoming here. Third linebacker in this game was Demetrius Flanagan-Foles, who had the interception off of the deflection on the throw to Garrett Wilson. It was deflected by Diamador Lenore. Defensive backs. I mean, this was good stuff for the defensive backs. I think early they were a little bit out of position. Nick Sorensen made that adjustment. This is why they get a B++. Plus, there was the free play. I guess that was more of Leonard Floyd's fault for biting. But Allen Lazard did get past the DBs. That being said, I mean, these guys deserve to be graded harshly this season because they've got a lot of potential. So many good players. The ball did not go toward the right side of the field where Charvarius Ward was. That was the ultimate Charvarius Ward tweet, right? When we saw this morning that Aaron Rodgers attempted to attack exclusively the left side of the field. Trying to go back up to the feed to see if we could find this. Here it is. Oh, no, that's the Jordan Mason running chart. Here it is. The Aaron Rodgers throwing chart. Wait till you see this if you missed it this morning. Rodgers throwing only to Let me get this out here so you guys can see this over the full screen. Rodgers throwing only to the left. That's Charvarius Ward taking off half the field. And then when Rodgers decided to go to the left, which was almost all the time in this game, Deommodore Lenoir and Isaac Yiadom made him pay. Pass breakup from Isaac Yiadom to essentially seal the game against Garrett Wilson. Lenoir is the one that knocked away the pass intended for Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles that bounced back to the interception. It was intended for Wilson, bounced back to Demetrius Flannigan-Fowles. So as long as the DBs on the left side are doing their job, if the ball is avoiding Charvarius Ward, the 49ers are set up to have a very, very nice secondary. No big safety lapses on this play, maybe a little bit on the free play, but it was a really solid day for the 49ers who don't have to be rushing Talanoa Hufanga back into action. And then special teams, well, there's enough said. Special teams, A+. 6 field goals made by Jake Moody in one game, 6 of 6. The last 49ers kicker to do that prior to Jake Moody was Robbie Gould in 2017 against the Titans. That was Jimmy Garoppolo's home debut as a starting quarterback. So that included a winning field goal at the very final buzzer. Cool stuff. Jake Moody was able to match that history. Became the first in 49ers franchise history to nail 6 in one game, with 2 of those coming from over 50 yards. The kickoff rule seems to be a net 0 for the 49ers, and maybe the whole league seems to be a very touchback heavy play. So those are the grades for the 49ers. Quarterback A, running back A+, receiver C, tight end A, offensive line B+, defensive line A, linebacker B+, defensive backs B+, and special teams A+. Really good grades for the 49ers. Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold is next.